everyone, I'm Adrienne, and this is the Hidden Curriculum of Life. In this podcast, I talk about the real stuff. It's the stories that have shaped me, the struggles that have tested me, and the moments that reminded me of who I am. Now, these are lessons that I was not taught in school, but they come from heartbreak and healing and very hard-earned growth. So my hope is that through these stories, you'll hear a little bit of your own and remember that you are stronger than you think. And you are never walking this road alone. I hope you enjoy my stories. Hi, episode 10, listener story, is a little different. It's actually a story somebody sent me, a listener. So I'm really happy I finally got someone to send me a story that I can read on my podcast. And it's a really good one. You'll enjoy. Let's begin. Why am I doing this? I'm one of the most private people you would ever meet. Very few are tuned into what my deepest thoughts are. It's just how I was raised and just how I am. Also, life experience has given me enough trust issues to think twice. Truthfully, I've also rarely gotten in trouble for something I didn't say. I've lived enough life to know that any one punch that you take on the chin can knock you down. Once you get up, there's another one waiting for you. Sometimes while your jaw is still fractured and has yet to heal. While the blood has just began to pour. Sometimes it's a bigger fist with a faster follow through. It's enough to keep anyone down. So back to why am I doing this? I don't know. I guess it just feels like I've learned enough to the point where now I know what I need to do and what to focus on in order to be part of a healthy relationship. And I'd like to help someone, anyone who is where I once was not long ago. I realized that in order for me to have any meaningful relationship with anyone, including a healthy relationship with myself, I first needed one with the boss, Jesus Christ. Chapter 0, the beginning. I grew up in a poor family. My first home infested with roaches. Though I have no recollection of this. I remember a small house, the layout of every room, never being hungry, and a lot of yelling. My first memory of my dad was him telling me if I didn't like what he said, I can just pack my bags and leave. The door just happened to be open, and I was around 4 years old. The whole world just outside scared the hell out of me. He was in his mid-40s when I was born. Mom was in her late 20s. She had her rough patches, but basically raised me and my siblings by herself while Dad worked to make ends meet. It was a strict upbringing. I felt he was super strict on everything, including practicing Catholicism. Praying every morning in front of a small picture of Jesus on my knees was mandatory. As a little boy, I did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy church. I did not enjoy the strictness he led the family with in general. Only on a handful of occasions was I ever allowed to go to anyone's house to hang out. I can recollect maybe 1 or 2 times. I had no real friends and made very few friends throughout my childhood. I wasn't allowed to be outside anywhere by myself except the backyard. I'm surprised I wasn't deprived by vitamin D sometimes. I went fishing with my dad 3 times. Twice by the age of 8 and once when I was in my late 20s. Movies and going out to dinner were rare, usually reserved for birthdays. More common was yelling when I asked for help with homework when I couldn't understand it. How scared I was. He was and is still very distant. Such is the extent of my relationship with him. Even less was the extent of the relationship he had with his father. His father joined World War II as a teenager and saw war. He came back changed forever, unable to be a good father or dad. I was fortunate to have a father who cared, but I never had a dad. Some marks were left with fear, insecurity, and a bunch of other baggage I didn't even know existed. To be fair, he wasn't given a good shot at all. Both his parents saw to that. To his credit, he did do better than his father. I wasn't physically abused like he was. He's not a bad person, but I still feel the pain he caused, and I still have to choose forgiveness when negative feelings arise. Even writing this now brings the pain to the surface. Mom was abused in multiple ways as a child, yet somehow was and is still always full of love. She gave me and all of my siblings so much love. Mom always took me to the park and helped me with most of my homework growing up until high school. You can't pick your parents, and sometimes they leave bad marks. Sometimes you don't realize that there are pieces that you need to pick up. I didn't realize it until this year. More on that later. Chapter 1: Wild and Not So Free. In my late 20s, I thought it'd be a great idea to join the military. I wanted to serve my country. I left a job with great potential for basic training with kids, some of which barely passed high school or their GED. It was quite the eye opener, the different kinds of people and mindsets you find in the armed forces. In truth, most of it didn't make sense. I spent my late 20s and my early 30s in the military. By my late 20s, I wasn't exactly someone that was inexperienced intimately with women. Ashamedly so. Looking back, I wish that I would have waited until I found a woman I'd like to spend the rest of my life with, to gift her with all of myself. That ship has long sailed. In today's culture, where being a ladies' man or a player are seen as a badge of honor, I've come to not appreciate those words and develop negative connotations for those. When someone described me as a player, I didn't like it. I wasn't trying to be. I just wanted that physical fulfillment that I thought meant love. I was chasing love in the wrong way. Being proactive, good at engaging in deeper conversation, saying the right things, and not being terribly bad looking led to success. It didn't do anything good long term. It did a lot of long term bad for my soul. In 2022, as I continued down this rabbit hole, I started to feel dead inside. After I had engaged in physical intimacy, even with a woman I cared for and thought I loved, she and I saw each other for several months. PSA: sex binds people together, and infatuation is not love. It doesn't last. And when things don't work out, the effects are devastating for the soul. Unfortunately, she had her own issues, as did I, so things crashed and burned. I got stood up hours before a Christmas dinner with her family. I spent many months very sad. 2023 came around and I found myself in Europe. I met a beautiful local who quite literally took my breath away when I first saw her. It was the best first date I had ever been on to this day. Around a month in, I thought I was in love. The sex contributed to that, I'm sure. I was also attracted to her mind and how we just seemed to think alike in several aspects. But her issues and my issues came to the forefront exceptionally fast. That brief romance also crashed and burned in 2 months flat. We both were too stubborn and too ignorant in our own ways. She left a 1.5+ year mark. More evidence of deeper issues yet to be identified. As my heart wandered around looking for love, I continued with my one-night stands to take the edge off of loneliness. The end of 2023 found me alone and secluded, by choice, to rest at a monastery, away from the pain of heartbreak, a toxic work environment, and a complete exhaustion physically, spiritually, and emotionally. I was a shell of myself. I had little life left inside me. The batteries were almost empty. I felt that I needed to reconnect with God first and foremost. That relationship was non existent, yet He still never left me in all of my most hopeless and depressing moments of that year. It was by far the worst year of my life, which was saying something. Such is His unconditional love and mercy. Chapter 2: Back to the drawing board. 2024 rolled around and I occasionally attended church. I forced myself to go semi-often. It gave me something to do even though the priest didn't look like he didn't want to be there. It wasn't inspiring. I also resolved to take a different approach with women. I wanted to get to know someone without sex in the equation. Scandalous, right? Well, it worked. I met an attractive woman. Exceptionally intelligent, pretty, funny. We spoke often. When she became ill, I helped take care of her. She didn't have anyone. I did household chores she physically couldn't, like take out the garbage and change her linens. She was helpless, which also hurt her pride. Nevertheless, we enjoyed spending time together in great conversation. It was enough. I thought that the foundation of a true friendship had developed. Time went by. Obviously, she liked me and I her. When I resolved to tell her officially how I felt, she knew it was coming. Then things got weird quickly. She had apparently decided to repress her emotions about me due to her concerns she had based on her previous relationships. Assumptions were projected onto me based on past men she was with. Ouch. I had started to love her, but the sharpest blade came when she finally communicated to me that her career came first. That curtain closed. I was devastated. I again retreated with my head down to lick my wounds and reverted back to dating, genuinely wanting a serious relationship, but still very unhealed. Many months passed before I realized I dodged not a bullet, but a cannonball. It became clear that she had unresolved issues too, and I deserved better. Chapter 3: A Light Upon the Scars. A few months before this devastating revelation, I realized I needed to work on myself through interesting circumstances. I wanted to start working on myself to become the man that my future wife would want and heal my invisible scars. I didn't want her or any future children of ours to suffer the effects of my issues like I did with my father. The circumstances that led to this realization came in early 2025. I found out my two siblings were in therapy. The common denominator was our father was given as the reason. Interesting? Did I need therapy? After all, we were all raised by the same man. Also, a close friend of mine told me he was being mentally abused by his new bride, who he didn't know too well. They dated for maybe several months before getting married. I looked up what mental abuse was, and emotional abuse came up. Most of the descriptors were personally familiar. Painful memories resurfaced like a tidal wave. Turns out there was something there, and my brand new therapist didn't disagree. That explained a lot. Son of a bitch. The strong anger, lack of any meaningful relationship with women or friendships, unexplained anxiety, and anger from unknown triggers, the repressed emotions, the lack of facial expressions when I was furious inside, it all made sense. When I decided to go to that dirty when I decided to go to that dirty word, therapy, I knew I needed to commit long term. I was very afraid, uncomfortable, defensive, and immediately did not like the therapist. Reason was because I didn't know him. I didn't trust him. He didn't do anything wrong. It was all my thoughts and feelings based on my trust. Therefore, I didn't like him to a certain extent. He worked quickly, and after the first few sessions, I cried buckets. Years of unresolved trauma that I didn't know I had, breaking the surface. Kudos to him for knowing what buttons to push. That was an exhausting evening. It felt like my brain had run the equivalent of a marathon without sleep or carbs. Exhausting sessions continued on like that for a while. Tears minimal from that point on, but I couldn't work out immediately after a session for weeks. Sometimes I really hated therapy. It was the most grueling mental event I've ever gone through. As I'm writing this, I realized what I had gone through as a kid contributed to me getting involved with the wrong women. I didn't realize it, but I had a lack of self-respect in this area of relationship. I think that the severe criticism contributed to seeking validation from women, but definitely the wrong women. Allow me to give more of an explanation. This vulnerability was due to my dad being my biggest supporter, yet my worst critic. He lacked emotional expression, demanded perfection, was too serious, distant, with a hair-trigger temper and an exceptional shouting voice. I was genuinely afraid when I did something wrong or when he got upset. Physical abuse was not the problem, but he wasn't above the occasional slap to the face. That hurt, the razor sharpness of his words with the frequent yelling cut the deepest. The sudden shift from calm to ferocity could happen over the most insignificant events. Words like stupid or effing idiot combined with severe criticism tailored toward unattainable perfection probably wasn't healthy to hear as a kid. When I wanted to try something new, he told me I didn't have what it took to accomplish it. I proved him wrong on a few occasions. I remember him trying to manipulate me into doing what he thought was best for my future. He was the extreme of both support and teardown. Talking about it now doesn't feel great. It hurts inside. So obviously, I'm not over it. It's not okay that it happened. I've met multiple people in the military with very similar, if not identical, behavior patterns. It didn't take, and there was friction with multiple people, one after another, for multiple years back to back. Through therapy, I've learned how to set boundaries, communicate what's not okay, and manage my expectation in my interactions with people, to include my dad. It's easier with other people. With him, it's a progressing work of effort. However, through God, all beautiful things are born, even through the actions of the most hurt people. For as God forgave us for our sins through the sacrifice of his only son, justice demands that we forgive others. And so I have offered and continue to offer up that pain to God so that I can continue to grow in forgiveness for my peace and out of love for God. I pray for my dad, who is still the same as far as I'm aware. Occasional conversations are best left occasional. Within the past few months, I've begun praying for the other people that have hurt me so much. Those that have taken the harmful actions, as well as those that have allowed those harmful actions to continue through their inaction. I think that at least sometimes the worst things that happen do happen because of the inaction of key individuals who had the power and or responsibility to act, and they chose not to. How could I pray for the good of people who've wronged me? Well, being angry, bitter, and maintaining open wounds isn't healthy. I don't want to feel this way. I want the inner peace that God provides more than I want to die on that hill. Furthermore, such unresolved feelings leave you open to losing the battle of spiritual warfare. I speak from experience. Unresolved feelings can create a victim mentality over lack of justice. When there's nothing more you can do, you can always offer it up to God. This cross is only a splinter of the suffering Christ suffered. And he forgave his executors after their unjust accusations and action of torture and ultimate murder of him. To be like Christ is to take up the cross. Until Jesus sees fit to lift it from my shoulders in whatever form this cross takes, I realize that I must pray for the strength to endure. For I am only a weak man, but with him, I have everything. This has only been a very recent revelation that I've actually began to accept and truly feel. I'm still a work in progress, but I want to continue growing in faith. And so I work to rewire my brain to this more positive mindset. I want to go back to my issues with forming relationships with women. Talk about confusing. I couldn't communicate my emotional needs or when these needs weren't met. That led to me being taken advantage of. Boundaries of respect pushed and multiple heartbreaks. Not good. Those experiences eventually made me less empathetic toward the women I was with for one night or for short-term intentions. I hurt some women's feelings almost as much as mine had been hurt. It was never my intention, but it happened. Because it was about my needs, my way of coping with pain from bad experiences with women, and I think due to wanting that feeling of love I didn't get from my father. My priorities were all wrong, focused on physical pleasure and physical love over spiritual gain, healing, and forgiveness that I could love healthily. I did seek long-term relationships, but those didn't last. I always sought them with the wrong kind of woman who didn't have the same values that I yearned to find in a woman. They all also had unresolved issues as bad or worse than mine. Go figure. In my brokenness, I often did not exhibit those very values that I wanted to find in a woman. How backwards my thinking was. I sacrificed those values for short-term pleasure, not realizing that what I really wanted was emotional intimacy and fulfillment. I couldn't identify my root needs. I didn't know that emotional fulfillment comes only after building a strong foundation of friendship, mutual respect, and love for the soul of the person. As the soul is from God, that emotional fulfillment and healthy relationship with the person can only come after a close, intimate relationship with Christ first. As I've already said, I've made progress in therapy. I've learned how to communicate better with significant others and potential partners. However, life reveals all of one's weaknesses, and it has in a three-pronged attack on multiple occasions: professionally, personally, and spiritually. In the middle was still that unresolved trauma in my interactions with another woman. Chapter 3: Trouble Afoot. Only a few months after the first woman's mic drop, I met another European woman. Second woman. Kind of a quirky, but in a good way. My first mistake was accepting her invite to share her bed on our first real date, which initially began as a movie night at her place. She invited me to stay the night after the movie. It was late. I agreed, but I didn't want anything to happen under the covers, so it didn't. And she didn't instigate anything, thank God. She later told me she was happy that I didn't. But on the third date, something did happen, and that was the beginning of the end. Despite how sweet she was, I did lose some respect for her after the first night, but I wanted it to work. I genuinely thought she was a sweet and a good person. She wanted to date exclusively, and I had my reservations due to my trust issues. But at the encouragement of the therapist, I agreed, and soon after, we were exclusive. However, extreme stress from work didn't do me any good. That combined with a weak spiritual life led to me being overcome by the temptation of another woman. I wasn't proud of myself and I wanted to be better. I began praying more and going to church more. I got more involved with the Catholic faith and realized that I no longer wanted to have any premarital relations, period. Not even with my exclusive girl, who I cared for. It was a distraction and I wanted to get to know this blonde-haired beauty for her, not for how she made me feel good sometimes. Not enough time was spent developing a foundation without sex. Sex was the focal point. I told her how important the faith was to me and how I wanted to stop sex, and she was damn surprised. In this European country, people don't abstain. It is unheard of. Most here don't practice Catholicism either. Despite her surprise, she said she wanted to attend Mass with me so she could understand, because it was important to me. Great. I was surprised in a good way. We went once and it was clear this wasn't for her, even though she was raised Catholic. We also differed in our thoughts about children and where to settle down. She wanted one, maybe two kids. She was a special needs teacher. She didn't want to leave her life or job in Europe. I was on a timetable. Eventually, I had no choice but to go back to the States after a few years. Her mind started to change because she began to fall in love with me. My feelings for her continued to grow, but we hit a wall. It came to be that I was given the choice to decide what was going to happen between us. She said she would wait for me, but wait for what? For her to find her faith or for me to lose mine? Wait for me to compromise on sex before marriage? How I saw things was that if we got married, I'd have to accept her for the person she was at that moment with no exception. She would change on her own. I definitely didn't want to force religion down her throat. I told her I needed time to think. How would my faith be impacted? Would we resent each other later on because of such differing beliefs? If I accepted her lack of faith and compromised it, maybe could work out. But I wanted to keep pursuing Jesus. I didn't want to compromise on that. Ultimately, I felt that if I stayed with her, it would be a slap to his face. I took almost a week to make a decision, and apparently that was too long. She called it quits when I tried calling to talk to her. To be honest, I had made up my mind that I was going to call it quits, but damn, I didn't think that she would side tackle me. It hurt. I thought about her every night for over 2 months. Almost 6 months later, I still think about her. Was I beginning to fall in love? Maybe. Was it real? Sex was real, and the effects of that were real. But love for her as a person, for the content of her character, for her soul, I didn't get it to that point. I wanted to, hence the no sex. I was ready to fully commit to just her to see if we both could get there. I had explained my reasons to her for not wanting to engage in sex anymore, but she thought it was because I didn't want to see her anymore and I was too coward to be direct. Not the case, but the damage was done. We had done this to each other. We hurt each other by moving too fast and not knowing each other well enough. When two people are not in sync spiritually, this happens. I grew in the faith too late, or maybe at the right time to keep me from ending up with the wrong person. She vocalized her thoughts with total transparency, graciously letting me know that she wanted nothing to do with the Catholic faith and that I ruined everything between us by bringing faith into the mix. When you move too fast with people, you don't know. You get these kind of surprises and this kind of pain and regret. Chapter 4, The Demands of the Cross. God's timing feels like it sucks sometimes, as does his will and what he allows to happen to us. But he's got it all figured out, even when we can't see it. In truth, we choose a lot of our own suffering, as I did. I knew full well that with any woman I met, the odds of it working out were always minuscule. Because what are the odds that the next person you date is going to be the love of your life? It's a low probability. So it puts into perspective not to be obsessive about finding a spouse, but letting God show off and work in his own time to do beautiful things for us. So my sweet, sweet blonde was out of the picture. And for several weeks now, I've gotten to know woman number 3. Smart, funny, silly, empathetic, not religious, but she didn't react the same way when I told her no relations. To be clear, we have not been intimate at all. I didn't progress past hugs. In the beginning, I told her my experience with the blonde and made it clear where my thoughts were in regards to sex. I was going to do things different this time and focus on the person first. She was happy about that, actually. She wanted to go slow too. The first 2 dates went great, and on our third date, some things didn't sound great. Her thoughts about men, seeing children as a burden, and not wanting to live in the same country for more than a few years so she wouldn't get bored. Red flags. That wouldn't mean too much if sex was involved, I'm sure. The rose-colored glasses would have been rosy. Red. Yet, I wanted someone to discuss, share, and grow in the faith with. I wouldn't be able to do this with her, even though she had no obvious distaste for religion. So what do I do? What do I do? It was like the blonde all over again. Stay and compromise and slap Jesus in the face, or wait it out for someone who shared the same values I was consciously trying and failing to exemplify? I made this decision very recently. I have just told her that it wasn't going to work out. At first, I dragged my feet because I like her and having someone to talk to, and I just haven't had the time. This annoyed me, so I turned proactive in trying to get a phone call. She needed to know out of respect for both of our time. I called her and she answered. I brought up what we discussed on our last date, how she wanted up to 1 kid and wanted to live in a different country every few years out of boredom. She acknowledged that kids were not a priority for her because of all the work they took. She grew up poor and now had the financial resources to visit other countries. Not just visit, but live there in order to understand different perspectives. Good for her. But I've moved around almost 1,000 times in roughly 5 years. I wanted to have more kids and to have a place to call home that I didn't leave every few years. She understood and said that wanting kids was beautiful, but it just wasn't for her. There were no hard feelings between us. Finally, I learned to communicate. I had successfully exercised my values over physical wants. I had avoided needlessly hurting someone and instead acted unselfish. What helped partly is a quote from Emily Wilson, a Catholic speaker on dating and relationships. She posed the question, would I regret choosing not to compromise on my values in dating? Nope. Not if staying true to my values resulted in a good spouse. Hell no, I wouldn't regret it. I also communicated with another woman recently. This one was harder because of the physical needs I wanted satisfied in that moment. She was also a woman of faith, and I could not lead her on for her selfish reasons. With that, I began cutting off communication with women I see no future with. What's the point? Physical and emotional intimacy is not a game. I don't want to throw it around with just anyone. Short-term fun is a distraction from a relationship with God, and I want Him to be first before anyone and everyone. It's a process, and there are significant obstacles. When you start going against the grain toward the light, the darkness moves towards you and tries to pull you back. At times, it can feel like an invisible weight upon you that keeps you from moving, such as a result of bad habits chosen by free will that keep one from God if nothing changes. Through all of these low moments came the dark night of the soul, which, for the record, lasts more than one night. It can be prolonged, happen multiple times, and it feels indefinite. It gets harder and harder to carry out those kind of activities in regards to temptations of the body. I'll hazard a guess that this is part of the process of spiritual growth. Chapter 5. Faith and Hope Beyond the Horizon. In the Catholic faith, premarital sex is a sin. Obviously, I didn't make it, but now I feel maybe, just maybe, I might be able to start over and wait. I'm more comfortable doing things differently and communicating my needs to a woman I have a romantic interest in. This is because I have more self-respect for what I deserve. I have more of a want to grow in Christ and to find someone that will get there, and vice versa. I now have more faith things will work out, though as I am only human, the dark night of the soul remains familiar. I am less uncomfortable being alone. The pain is less, not completely gone, though I am optimistic. I do like to think about all the things that couples do that I can't wait to do. Wonderful movie nights curled up on the couch, eating breakfast together. I want her face to be the first thing I see in the morning and the last thing I see every night for the rest of my life. That being said, I continue to find women who are faithfully Catholic much more attractive, but I'm trying to first find fulfillment in Christ. In doing so, I can learn to avoid idolizing the world and anyone else, or any feeling that I can't measure up to what the soul demands. This includes avoiding idolizing myself, my own wants and desires over Christ. The soul demands to be one with Christ. No woman can provide that. I've realized that first, I must seek Christ. All else will follow. I've also realized that my eyes should see people in general first as brothers and sisters in Christ, even people I don't like. It doesn't mean I'm going to hug everybody I see, but this mindset will allow me to see people, and in this case, women, with more respect than I've treated them at times. To focus on getting to know the soul of the person over obtaining the physical knowing of a person. Even if a woman doesn't have the self-respect to withhold herself from a man she barely knows, it doesn't mean that I have to aid in that disrespect. I can respect her more by practicing self-control of my own desires. In practicing self-control, I'll be able to give more respect to whomever my future spouse is, because I've built a foundation on focusing on who people are over what people need and what people can provide me. I'll be able to understand who she is as a person without distractions and how we can help each other grow as one in Christ before any kind of physical intimacy is involved. Real love is sacrificial, as Jesus demonstrated. The good of the other over the good of thyself. He came to save all of us as we are, flaws and all. I can't think of a greater act of love than his sacrifice for me and for you. Christ before all, since Christ died for all. The end. Thank you for spending time with me on the Hidden Curriculum of Life. I hope that today's story reminded you that your journey really does matter. Your storms, your scars, and your strength. And if you know of anybody else that can get something out of this podcast or this episode, please share it. And until next time, remember, the lesson is always in living because you matter. Thank you.